Senior strategist Xacthor's four eyes widened as he stared at the holographic display. His purple scales shifted color slightly, a sign of extreme surprise among his species. The data couldn't be right. He checked the numbers again, then a third time. Somehow, the primitive humans had done the impossible. "Call everyone to the observation chamber," he ordered his assistant. Now. Within minutes, the massive circular room filled with the galaxy's finest military analysts. They came in all shapes and sizes, some floating, others crawling, a few even rolling in on specialized mobility spheres. All of them were experts in warfare and technology, gathered by the Galactic Council to study emerging civilizations. At the center of their attention was a small blue planet called Earth, and more specifically, a research facility in New Mexico where Lisa Martinez was about to change everything. Lisa didn't know she was being watched by alien eyes as she walked into her lab that morning. She was just a regular engineer who loved her work, wearing slightly wrinkled clothes and carrying a cup of coffee that was already getting cold. Her curly brown hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and dark circles under her eyes showed how little she'd slept lately. "Morning, Dr. Martinez," called out her assistant, Peter Walsh, from behind a bank of computers. The new test results came in overnight. Lisa's tired expression brightened immediately. She hurried over, nearly spilling her coffee. "Show me." Peter pulled up the data on the main screen. The numbers and graphs told a story that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. Their team had successfully bent space, not just in theory, but in practice. It wasn't much, just a tiny fold in the fabric of space-time, but it was real. Up in orbit, Xacthor and his team watched with growing amazement. "How are they doing this with such primitive equipment?" asked Dr. Zira, her tentacles waving in agitation. "Their most advanced quantum computers are barely better than children's toys by our standards." Xacthor shook his head slowly. "That's what makes it so fascinating. Look at their approach. It's completely different from anything we've tried in the last 1,000 years." The aliens watched as Lisa and her team ran more tests throughout the day. They had no idea that their simple setup, a ring of modified particle accelerators surrounded by quantum field generators, was making the galaxy's greatest minds question everything they knew about physics. Back in the lab, Lisa was excited but careful. She'd learned from past mistakes that rushing could ruin months of work. "Peter, let's run the sequence again, but this time let's increase the field strength by 2%. The machine hummed to life. In the center of the ring, space itself seemed to ripple like the surface of a pond. Peter checked the readings and grinned. "It's stable. The fold is holding steady at 0.3 micrometers. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. After 3 years of work, they were finally getting somewhere. What she didn't know was that her somewhere was far beyond anything humans had achieved before. In the observation chamber, the alien experts were now in an uproar. Beings from 100 different worlds argued about what they were seeing. Some insisted it had to be a mistake. Others demanded immediate intervention to stop the humans before they hurt themselves. A few just stared in silence, their worldviews crumbling. "Quiet." Xacthor's voice cut through the chaos. "We need to understand this. The humans have found a way to bend space using less energy than we thought possible. Their method is crude, yes, but it works. The question is, how?" Dr. Zira moved forward, her floating platform bringing her to eye level with Xacthor. "I've been analyzing their research papers. They approached the problem backwards compared to our methods. Instead of trying to force space to bend, they found a way to persuade it." The concept was so strange that the chamber fell silent. In all the galaxy's history, no one had thought to try it that way. Advanced civilizations had massive machines that could tear holes in space-time through sheer power. But this was like finding out that instead of breaking down a door, you could simply find the key. Lisa, meanwhile, was focused on a small problem with the power supply. "Peter, can you check the secondary containment field? The readings are fluctuating." As Peter worked, Lisa made notes in her tablet. The team had started this project looking for better ways to store quantum information. Nobody had expected it to lead to space bending. But when they noticed strange effects in their quantum field experiments, Lisa had followed the evidence, even when others said she was wasting her time. The aliens continued their observation, recording every detail. They saw how the humans used simple materials in creative ways, how they solved problems with limited resources, and most importantly, how they weren't bound by traditional thinking. Look at this, Hexacthor pointed to a detail in Lisa's equations. They're treating space-time as if it were flexible rather than rigid. All our calculations assume space must be forced to bend. They're assuming it can be persuaded to bend naturally. Dr. Zira's tentacles curled in excitement. That's why they need so little energy. They're not fighting against the universe. They're working with it. As the day went on, Lisa's team ran more tests. Each success was small, but the aliens could see where this was heading. Within years, maybe even months, humans would discover how to create stable space bends large enough for practical use. After that, it would be a short step to faster-than-light travel, using methods that consumed a fraction of the energy required by current galactic technology. Near the end of her shift, Lisa saved the day's data and stretched in her chair. Good work today, Peter. Tomorrow, we'll try to increase the fold size again. Do you really think we can make it big enough to be useful? Peter asked, shutting down his workstation. Lisa looked at the quiet machinery, unaware that she was being watched by some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. I think we're just scratching the surface. There's something fundamental we're touching here, something nobody's quite understood before. We just need to keep pushing, keep trying new approaches. In the observation chamber, Sackthor made his decision. We need to prepare a full report for the Council. This changes everything. Our understanding of physics, our military strategies, our entire technological approach. Should we contact them? Asked one of the analysts. Offer guidance. No, Hexacthor said firmly. We'll watch and learn. The humans are teaching us more than we could ever teach them right now. As Lisa left the lab that evening, thinking about ordering takeout and getting some sleep, she had no idea that her work had just started a revolution in galactic science. She was just doing what humans had always done, looking at old problems in new ways, trying things that shouldn't work, and slowly, steadily, changing the impossible into the possible. Up in orbit, Sackthor wrote the first lines of what would become a historic report. Human space-bending technology represents not just a scientific advancement, but a fundamental shift in how we understand the universe. Their greatest strength lies not in their tools or resources, but in their ability to think differently. The data from Lisa's lab continued to stream across his screens, each number and measurement adding to a picture that would soon change the galaxy forever. John Patterson's laboratory didn't look like much from the outside. It was just an old barn on the outskirts of Missoula, Montana, repainted white and filled with what most people would call junk. But to the aliens watching from orbit, it was becoming the most interesting place on Earth. Another one, Dr. Zira said, her tentacles rippling with excitement. Another human who stumbled onto space-bending technology while trying to do something completely different. Sackthor moved closer to the holographic display. What was he trying to do? According to his notes, he was looking for a way to make cheaper electricity, one of the analysts replied. He's been working on it for 20 years. Inside the barn, John was doing what he did every morning, tinkering with his machines. He was in his 50s, with gray hair and wearing old jeans with a flannel shirt. His hands were steady as he adjusted the strange device he built in the center of the room. The machine looked like a cross between a solar panel and a satellite dish, with rings of copper wire wrapped around it in odd patterns. John had built it from spare parts and equipment he bought at auctions. He called it his energy collector, though he wasn't quite sure what kind of energy it was collecting. Ready for another try, Billy? He called out to his nephew, who helped him on weekends. Billy, a high school student who loved science, looked up from his laptop. "Power levels are good, Uncle John. Want me to start recording?" "Go ahead." John flipped a switch, and the machine hummed to life. In orbit, the alien observers leaned forward. Their instruments detected the same kind of space-time fluctuations they'd seen in Lisa Martinez's lab, but the method was completely different. "How is this possible?" Thor muttered. "He's causing the same effect using totally different principles, and he doesn't even know what he's doing." The truth was starting to dawn on the alien observers. Humans hadn't just discovered space-bending technology recently. They'd been accidentally discovering it over and over, approaching it from dozens of different angles. Most of these discoveries had been dismissed or forgotten because nobody realized what they were seeing. Back in the barn, John adjusted some dials. The air around his machine seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. "Billy, are you seeing anything on the power readings?" "Yeah, but it's weird. The numbers don't make sense. It's like we're getting more energy out than we're putting in." John frowned. He'd seen this before, readings that seemed impossible. Most scientists would have assumed their equipment was broken, but John was stubborn. If his measurements said something impossible was happening, he wanted to know why. In the observation chamber, Dr. Zira was making connections. "Look at the records we've gathered." A university in Brazil noticed similar effects while studying atmosphere patterns. A research team in Kenya found it while working on soil analysis. A high school teacher in Japan saw it during a simple physics demonstration. And none of them realized what they were seeing, Thor said. Each discovery was isolated, treated as a curiosity or a measurement error. But now they're starting to connect. Another analyst added, "Look at these internet forum posts. People are sharing their weird science stories. They're beginning to see the pattern." John didn't know about any of this as he continued his experiments. He was focused on one goal: finding a way to make clean, cheap energy for people who needed it. He'd grown up on a farm, watching his parents struggle to pay the power bills. That's why he'd started this project. "Uncle John," Billy called out, "someone posted about your work online. A scientist from California wants to talk to you." John looked surprised. "What did you post?" "Just some of our power readings. There's a whole discussion about similar results from other experiments. They're calling it the Patterson effect." In orbit, the aliens watched as humans began to piece together what they'd discovered. Different teams around the world were starting to share their findings, not realizing they were all looking at the same thing from different angles. "This is unprecedented," Thor said. "Most species discover space-bending technology through massive, coordinated research projects. The humans are discovering it by accident over and over, while trying to solve completely different problems." Dr. Zira's tentacles waved thoughtfully. "Maybe that's why their approach is so different from ours. They're not trying to conquer space-time. They're just trying to understand why their experiments don't work the way they expect." As the day went on, John received more messages from scientists interested in his work. He read them carefully, surprised by the attention but willing to share what he knew. That was another thing the aliens found remarkable about humans: their willingness to share information freely. "Look at this," one of the analysts said. "They're organizing a conference, scientists from around their world, all bringing their unexplained results to compare notes." Thor watched as John packed up his notes, preparing to travel to the conference. They're about to make the connection. Once they realize all these different effects are the same phenomenon. "Should we stop them?" someone asked. "Stop them." Dr. Zira's color changed to indicate amusement. "We should thank them. They're showing us possibilities we never imagined." In his barn, John carefully documented his latest test results. He didn't know he was on the verge of a discovery that would change the galaxy. He was just doing what he'd always done, trying to solve problems, sharing what he learned, and staying curious about things he didn't understand. Billy helped him pack up some of his equipment for the conference. "Do you think anyone will believe your results?" John smiled. "Doesn't matter if they believe it. The numbers are real. The effect is real. We just have to figure out why it's happening. The aliens continued their observation, watching as humans around the world began sharing their discoveries. Each person had seen a piece of the puzzle while trying to solve everyday problems. Now those pieces were coming together. This is why we need to study them, Thor told his team. They don't just have space-bending technology. They have a completely different way of finding answers. They start with simple questions. How can we make cheaper energy? Why do these measurements look wrong? What happens if we try this? And those simple questions lead them to profound discoveries. As John finished packing for the conference, he looked around his old barn-turned laboratory. 20 years of work were stored here, most of it focused on a goal he still hadn't achieved, bringing affordable power to people who needed it. He had no idea that his stubborn pursuit of that goal had led him to discover principles that the galaxy's greatest scientists had missed. In orbit, Thor added to his report, human innovation appears to be driven not by a desire for power or advancement, but by a need to solve practical problems. This approach, while seemingly primitive, has led them to insights that our most advanced research programs fail to recognize. The humans are not following our path to the stars. They are creating their own. Catherine Wright stood at the window of her office in Washington, D.C., watching the sunset. As Earth's chief diplomatic officer, she had dealt with many difficult situations before, but nothing like this. The message from the Galactic Council sat open on her tablet, its demands clear and troubling. They wanted Earth's space-bending technology. All of it. Mrs. Wright. Her assistant poked his head in. The president is ready for your call. Catherine nodded, straightening her blue suit jacket. She'd been in this job for 15 years, but the last 3 months, since the aliens had revealed themselves, had been the most challenging of her career. In orbit, Thor and Dr. Zyra watched the humans prepare for another round of negotiations. Their observation posts have become much busier since first contact, with experts from across the galaxy arriving daily to study human technology. They'll refuse again, Thor said quietly, just like the last 3 times. Dr. Zyra adjusted her floating platform. The council doesn't understand. They think they can simply demand the technology because they're more advanced. They don't see what makes the humans different. Down on Earth, Catherine joined the video call with the president and other world leaders. Their faces filled screens around her office, each showing the same concern she felt. They're getting impatient, the president said. Their last message included what they're calling friendly suggestions about sharing technology. Catherine knew what that meant. The Galactic Council was used to dealing with younger civilizations who were eager to trade their discoveries for advanced alien technology. But humans weren't following the usual pattern. We need to make them understand, Catherine said. Our technology isn't just a thing we can hand over. It's a process, a way of thinking. In their observation post, the aliens watched the humans discuss their options. Dr. Zyra had been studying human decision-making patterns, and she found them fascinating. Look how they work together, she told Thor. Each leader brings different concerns, different ideas. They don't just follow the one with the most power. Catherine spent the next few hours in meetings, explaining Earth's position to various alien representatives. She had to use simple terms since the translation devices sometimes struggled with complex ideas. Our space-bending technology comes from many sources, she explained to a group of blue-skinned aliens. We can't just give you the plans because there aren't any single plans. It's dozens of different discoveries, all working together. The aliens didn't seem to understand. One of them, taller than the others, leaned forward. But surely you have a central research facility. A main database. Catherine shook her head. We have hundreds of labs, thousands of researchers, all trying different approaches. That's how we work. That's how we discover things. Back in orbit, Thor received a direct message from the Council. They were growing frustrated with Earth's resistance. Some members were suggesting more aggressive measures. They still don't understand, he told Dr. Zura. The Council thinks the humans are being difficult on purpose. They don't see that this is exactly why human technology is so valuable, because it doesn't come from one place or one way of thinking. Down in her office, Catherine prepared for another meeting. This time, she had a different approach in mind. Instead of just talking about the technology, she would show them how it was developed. She connected to a video call with Lisa Martinez's lab in New Mexico and John Patterson's barn in Montana. She added feeds from research teams in Brazil, Kenya, and Japan. Each screen showed different equipment, different methods, all working toward the same goal. This is how we work, she told the alien representatives. Not by following one path, but by trying many paths. Each team learns from the others, but they all keep their own way of doing things. The aliens watched in silence as the human scientists explained their work. Each approach was different, yet somehow they all led to the same discovery: ways to bend space using far less energy than should be possible. Dr. Zura noticed something interesting in the council members' reactions. They're starting to see it, she told Sackthor. The value isn't in the technology itself. It's in how the humans develop it. Catherine could see it too. The slight change in the aliens' posture, the way they leaned forward when the scientists spoke. They were beginning to understand. We're happy to work with you, she told them. But we won't simply hand over our technology. We want to collaborate, to learn from each other. That's how humans do things. In orbit, Sackthor received another message from the council. This one was different. Instead of demands, they were asking questions about human research methods. Finally, he said to Dr. Zura, "They're asking the right questions." Catherine spent the rest of the day in more meetings, but the tone had changed. The aliens were no longer demanding immediate access to Earth's technology. Instead, they wanted to understand how humans had developed it. "Your species is very strange," one of the alien diplomats told her. "You don't work the way we expected, but maybe that's good." As the sun set over Washington, Catherine allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a start. The aliens were beginning to understand that Earth's real value wasn't in its technology, but in its people and their way of thinking. In their observation post, Sackthor and Dr. Zira watched the diplomatic tensions begin to ease. They had seen something like this before, moments when advanced civilizations had to admit that being older didn't always mean being wiser. "Add this to the report," Sackthor told his team. "The humans have shown us that true innovation doesn't come from following established paths. It comes from being willing to try new ways, to work together while thinking differently, and to share what we learn." Catherine left her office late that night, tired but hopeful. Tomorrow would bring more meetings, more negotiations, more explanations. But now the aliens were starting to understand. Earth wasn't just another young civilization to be guided and controlled. It was a place where new ideas could grow in unexpected ways, where different approaches led to remarkable discoveries. And that, she knew, was worth more than any single piece of technology. William Cooper hadn't expected to become important to galactic science. He was just a retired physics professor who liked to explain things clearly. But now he sat in a room full of aliens, trying to help them understand how humans think. "The key," he said, drawing on a simple whiteboard, "is that we don't know we're not supposed to be able to do something." His gray hair was messy, and his sweater had chalk dust on it, but the aliens hung on every word. Dr. Zira floated closer on her platform. "Please explain this concept again, Professor Cooper." William smiled and drew a simple diagram. "When my granddaughter was 6, she wanted to know why the sky is blue. Instead of giving her the technical answer about light scattering, I helped her figure it out herself using a glass of water and a flashlight." The aliens looked confused. Sackthor, standing nearby, asked, "But why not simply tell her the correct answer?" "Because finding the answer yourself teaches you how to think, not just what to think," William explained. He had taught physics for 40 years, and he'd learned that how you teach was just as important as what you teach. In orbit, The Galactic Council's observation post was now filled with screens showing William's lectures. The aliens had started recording him when they realized he could explain something they'd been missing: the human approach to problem solving. "Watch this," Dr. Zara told a group of new observers. The screen showed William working with a group of high school students a few years ago. They were trying to build a small engine using spare parts. "See how he doesn't tell them what to do," she pointed out. "He asks questions, lets them make mistakes, helps them figure things out on their own." Back in the classroom, William was showing the aliens more examples. He pulled out old student projects, simple experiments, and failed attempts that led to unexpected discoveries. "Humans are naturally curious," he explained. "When something doesn't work the way we expect, we don't just give up. We wonder why. Sometimes we're too stubborn to accept that something is impossible." One of the alien scientists raised a limb. "But your technology is primitive compared to ours. How can you discover things we missed?" William walked to the window and pointed at a bird flying outside. For thousands of years, humans watched birds and dreamed of flying. We didn't have anti-gravity technology or energy fields. We had wood, fabric, and determination. So we learned about airflow, wing shapes, and lift. Dr. Zira's tentacles rippled with excitement as she understood. "You found a different path because you had to." "Exactly," William nodded. "And that's what happened with space-bending technology. We didn't have the advanced tools you use, so we had to think differently." He pulled out some of Lisa Martinez's early notes and John Patterson's sketches. "Look at these." Lisa was trying to store quantum information more efficiently. John wanted to make cheaper electricity. Neither of them started out trying to bend space. The aliens studied the human documents with new interest. They were beginning to see that humanity's primitive technology wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. It forced humans to find creative solutions. "It's like teaching a child to walk," William said, using another simple example. "You don't give them detailed instructions about muscle movement and balance. You let them try, fall down, and try again. They figure it out themselves." Zach Thor, who had been quietly watching, suddenly spoke up. "This is why our demands for your technology made no sense. We were asking for the answers when the real value is in how you find the answers." William smiled. "Now you're getting it." Throughout the day, more alien scientists came to William's classroom. Some were military experts, others were researchers, and a few were teachers from other worlds. They all wanted to understand how humans had accomplished so much with so little. "Show us more examples," they asked. So William told them about the Wright brothers, who built the first airplane in their bicycle shop. He talked about Marie Curie, working in a shed to discover radioactivity. He showed them pictures of garage inventors and backyard scientists who kept trying new ideas just because they were curious. "Humans don't wait until we have perfect tools," he explained. "We use what we have and try to make it work." In orbit, Dr. Zero was adding to her research notes. "Human ingenuity appears to be driven by three main factors: curiosity, necessity, and stubbornness. They don't know something is impossible, so they try anyway. They don't have advanced tools, so they find clever ways to use simple ones. And when they fail, they keep trying new approaches." As the afternoon went on, William set up some simple experiments. He showed the aliens how humans had discovered important scientific principles using basic equipment. Each demonstration made the same point. Sometimes having less advanced technology forces you to understand things more deeply. When you have very advanced tools, he told them, it's easy to use them without really understanding why they work. But when you have to build something from scratch, you learn things you might have missed. The aliens watched as he helped a group of students build a simple electric motor using wire, batteries, and magnets. It was far less advanced than their technology, but it taught basic principles in a way anyone could understand. This is why human space-bending technology is different, William explained. We discovered it piece by piece, trying to solve everyday problems. We had to understand the basic principles because we couldn't rely on advanced technology to do the work for us. As evening approached, Thor gathered his team for a meeting. Professor Cooper has helped us see something important, he told them. The humans' greatest strength isn't their technology. It's their approach to discovering and understanding it. William packed up his teaching materials, tired but satisfied. He had spent his life helping students understand science, and now he was doing the same thing for beings from other worlds. Will you teach us more tomorrow? Dr. Zura asked. Of course, William smiled. But remember, my job isn't to give you answers. It's to help you find new ways to look for them yourselves. In orbit, the observation post report now included a new section. The theory of human ingenuity. How limited resources lead to unlimited thinking. The aliens were beginning to understand that sometimes the longest way around was actually the shortest way home. Sandra Morrison walked through the newly built International Space Development Center, her footsteps echoing in the large hall. As the head of Earth's Space Development Program, she was about to do something that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. Teach alien scientists how to think more like humans. The building itself showed how much things had changed. Humans and aliens had built it together, combining Earth's practical designs with advanced alien materials. The walls could change color to match different alien vision types, and the floors adjusted their hardness for different kinds of legs and tentacles. Ready for the first class? Asked Dr. Zira, floating beside her on a platform that now used human-designed space-bending technology to stay up. As ready as I'll ever be, Sandra replied, smoothing her gray suit. Her dark hair was streaked with silver, marking her 30 years of experience in space research. How many students do we have? 200 from 50 different worlds, Thor said, walking up to join them, and more asking to join every day. The classroom they entered was unlike any other in the galaxy. Some students sat in chairs, others floated in tanks, and a few hung from the ceiling. But they all shared the same eager look. They wanted to learn the human way of solving problems. Welcome to Earth's first Galactic Innovation Workshop, Sandra began. We're not here to teach you our technology. We're here to share how we discover and develop new ideas. In orbit, the Galactic Council's observation post had changed too. Instead of just watching humans, it now helped coordinate the biggest scientific cooperation program in galaxy history. Screens showed research teams on hundreds of worlds, all trying new approaches to old problems. Look at this, one of the observers pointed to a screen. The Zentari just developed a new type of engine by combining their quantum technology with human-style trial and error methods. Sandra moved around the classroom, showing examples of human problem-solving. She had gathered items from Lisa Martinez's lab, John Patterson's barn, and William Cooper's classroom. Each piece told a story of human ingenuity. The key isn't having the best tools, she explained, holding up John's homemade energy collector. It's understanding the basic principles so well that you can work with whatever tools you have. The alien students took notes in their various ways. Some used computers, others stored memories in crystalline structures, and a few absorbed information directly through their skin. But they all understood the importance of what they were learning. Your species was using space-bending technology without even knowing it, one student said. You discovered it 5 different ways while trying to solve other problems. Sandra nodded. That's because we didn't start by trying to bend space. We started by asking simple questions. How can we store energy better? Why do these measurements look strange? What happens if we try this? In another part of the building, Lisa Martins and John Patterson were working with a team of alien scientists. They had combined John's energy collection ideas with Lisa's quantum field research, creating something entirely new. It's amazing, Lisa said, watching their combined technology at work. Your advanced sensors helped us understand why our methods worked, and our different approach helped you see new possibilities. The aliens had learned that copying human technology wasn't the answer. Instead, they needed to understand the human approach to discovery. Sometimes, having too much advanced technology could actually hold you back. It could stop you from seeing simpler, better solutions. Show them the kindergarten example, Dr. Zyra suggested to Sandra. Sandra smiled and pulled out a simple toy building set. When human children play with blocks, we don't tell them exactly what to build. We let them try things, knock them down, and try again. They learn more from experimenting than they would from following strict instructions. The alien students watched in fascination as she demonstrated how this simple principle had led to major breakthroughs in human science and technology. That's why we couldn't just give you our space-bending technology, she explained. It wasn't a single invention. It was hundreds of small discoveries, made by people who weren't afraid to try new things and learn from their mistakes. Zach Thor, who had watched humans from the beginning, added his own thoughts. Your species showed us something we had forgotten. That progress doesn't always mean moving forward in a straight line. Sometimes you have to step back, look at things differently, and try new paths. As the day went on, more examples of human-alien cooperation appeared on the observation screens. A team in the Andromeda Galaxy had solved a centuries-old energy problem using simple human mechanical principles. Another group had improved faster than light travel by studying how humans stored quantum information. We're entering a new age, Sandra told her class. Not because we humans had better technology, but because we showed the galaxy a different way to solve problems. In orbit, the observation post was sending its final report to the Galactic Council. The report's conclusion was simple but powerful. The humans' greatest contribution to galactic science isn't their technology, it's their way of thinking. They taught us that true progress comes from being willing to try new approaches, learn from failures, and share what we discover. As the first day of classes ended, Sandra stood with Dr. Zira and Zach Thor, watching the alien students leave. Some were already trying to solve old problems in new ways, inspired by what they had learned. Did you ever think it would turn out like this? Dr. Zira asked. When you first detected our observation posts. Sandra shook her head. We thought you might want our technology. We never guessed you'd want our teaching methods instead. Zach Thor looked out at the Earth through a window designed to work for all kinds of alien eyes. Your world has changed the galaxy more than you know. Not through power or advanced technology, but by showing us a new way to learn and discover. The International Space Development Center would go on to become the most important scientific institution in the galaxy. Not because it had the most advanced equipment or the most powerful computers, but because it taught something more valuable, the human spirit of discovery. As night fell over the center, Sandra made one final note in her daily log. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history. We humans didn't give the galaxy our technology. We gave them something better. We gave them our curiosity, our creativity, and our stubborn refusal to believe that anything is impossible. And in return, they gave us the stars.